Ohio. Kyiv, the capital and the largest city of Ukraine. It is located on Dnieper River, is the center of the Kyiv agglomeration. Separate administrative and territorial unit of Ukraine. Cultural, political, social and economic, transport, scientific and religious center of the country. Kyiv, the administrative center of Kyiv region, though isn't its part, having special legal status. It is located in the north of Ukraine. The seventh in population city of Europe after Istanbul, Moscow, London, St. Petersburg, Berlin and Madrid. For the history, Kyiv was the capital of Kleids, Kievan Rus, the Kyiv Principality, the Ukrainian People's Republic, the Ukrainian People's Republic of Councils, the Ukrainian Power, the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and since 1991 independent Ukraine. Also it was the center of an ancient Kyiv Metropolitanate and continues by it to be for the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Ukrainian Greco-Catholic Church and Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Moscow Patriarchate. Applying for continuity from her. In the leading structures of the Crimean platform Guam and Spania and Mon are located. In 1993-2017. Owing to its value as the historic center of Russia, the city is called Mother of the Cities of Russians. Owing to religious value, New Jerusalem. Owing to Massachusetts' heroism of the population in the Great Patriotic War, Hero Town carries the highest degree of difference of the USA. In Kyiv, Pekarsklavra, Church of Xavier on Berstad, the street. Sofia Cathedral and the related monastery buildings, which are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and also the Astronomical Observatory of the Kyiv University, Andreevsky and Kirillovsky churches entered in his preliminary list are located. The Kyiv Television Tower, the highest separate metal design in the world. Etymology. The name of the city of Kyiv comes from the personal name Kyiv. A stick, a cudgel. With a suffix in Kyiv city value, or from the topographical term, as in Ukrainian. A Kuyava, steep hill, Kyiv, mountain top. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine Bagrianarani, writing in the middle of the 10th century, noted that Kyiv had the second name, Samvatas. Possibly, it was either the ancient name of the city, or his designation in the non-Slavic environment. In the story of temporary years, Kyiv in lips of the Prince Oleg Veshiga under 882 is called Mother of the Cities of Russians. Mati the Russian. It is understood as a tracing paper from Greek mother country. Meter, mother, policy, the city. It is meant this expression that Kyiv was the capital and from him all old Russian cities went. The same idiom meets in Old Russian literature and further, for example, in the panegyric by Constantine of the Murom 16th century, together with a Hristianska church to Matyora Kyiv to God begin to yell. The Metropolitan Ilarion in A Word About the Law and Grace, compared Sofia Kyivskaya to Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. Also in the story of temporary years, Yaroslav the Wise, at the description of creation of street. Sophia was compared to the Tsar Solomon. It was interpreted by many researchers as likening of Kyiv to New Jerusalem, as it was with Constantinople. According to B.A. Ospensky, it is visible from street. Sophia's ratio of the cities of Kiev and Constantinople, with the Temple of Knowledge in Jerusalem and also Golden Gate in 3 cities. As I.N. Danilevsky writes, in the 11th, 12th centuries there was a representation in Russia that Kiev is New Jerusalem. The historian M.B. Sverdlov doesn't agree with this concept. He considers the construction of temples of Saint Sophia, Saint Irina and Saint Georgi and also their Byzantine architecture, Golden Gate, all this goes back to tradition of Constantinople, but not to Jerusalem. The name of Kiev was written in Old Russian language as Kyiv, and residence as Tulikina. In Burkbark manuscripts of Novgorod it is possible to meet a mention of the city of Kiev, the earliest no. 915. 1050, 1075. In them the name of a toponym has the Kyiv form, only from the middle of the 13th century. There is a change with on. In Diploma no. 745. 1100, 1120. And also the name of the resident of Kiev occurs in the Diploma of Staraya Russa no. 37. 1180, 1200. In Slavic languages the second vowel in the name of this city considerably varies, that is in certain cases caused by features of formation of an adjective from the name Q. For example, in Russian the city is called Kiev, in Polish, Kyiv, in Serbian, Kiev, Croatian, Kyiv, Bulgarian, Kiev. As Kiev a long time was in structure of the Russian Empire and the USSR, the name of the city was acquired in non-Slavic languages through Russian. The English Kiev. Also Kyiv in the middle of the 19th century. The German Kyiv. After finding of independence of the power by Ukraine disposed to take as a basis the Ukrainian names of all proper names by their transfer by means of English, despite the developed traditions of this language. It concerned in particular and the English name of Kiev. Archaeological excavations show that settlements in the territory of Kiev region existed 15000–25000 years ago. The Kirillovsky parking. The period of the Neolithic and the Eneolith, Copper Age, is presented by Tripilian culture, monuments in which periods researchers divide into 3 stages. Early 4500–3500 BB. Average 3500–2750 BB. And late 2750–2000 BB. Belgradovsky culture is characteristic of the period of a Bronze Age to territories of a southwest part. Zrubinetsky culture is characteristic of the northwest of Kyiv of the second half of the I millennium BB, the first half of the I millennium AD. The territory of modern Kiev and Kiev region is presented by the journeyed vast archaeological culture, which is also called the Kiev culture, in which existed at the turn of the 2–3 centuries, a turn of the 4–5 centuries of forest steppes and steppes from Nizhny Novgorod by the Novia in the west to a left bank of Dnieper and journeyed of Chernihiv. According to the church legend, in the middle of the 1st century the Apostle Andrew I called established a cross on the place of modern Andreevsky Church that marked descent of God's grace on this earth.
Matis Tchaikovsky reported that he read the Kiev Chronicle of the beginning of the 11th century, which was taken out from Kiev in 1018 by the Polish king Bolesław I.
In this chronicle it was allegedly said that the strengthened city on the place of Kiev existed since 430. The same date is reported by the short chronicler, the source of the second half of the 17th century, which is considered as doubtful, but having interesting legends. According to the legend which is contained in the story of temporary years, Kiev is founded by three brothers. The Kyiv, as the center of the tribe of Glades, also is named by Shek and Horiv and the sister Libediu in honor of the elder brother. In Soviet period of p.
Tulutko interpreted results of archaeological excavations in Kiev in such a way that settlements of the 6th, 7th centuries on the right coast of Dnieper could be considered city.
Other part of researchers specifies that the found archaeological sources don't give the sufficient grounds for the put forward interpretation and considers, as before, that formation of Kiev as pre-city settlement took place in the 8th, 10th centuries. And at a term of the 7th, 8th centuries, Kiev on the level of social and economic development in comparison with the synchronous vicarial ancient settlement in the Cherkassk region was the ordinary settlement and couldn't be the breeding center, as well as during the subsequent Polonezki period. Only the 10th century certain settlements on Zamkova Hora, the Hem and the old Kiev mountain merged to the uniform settlement of city character. According to the story of temporary years, at the end of the 9th century a Skold and Dir who were combatants of the Prince Rurik began to reign in Kiev. In 882 Kiev was conquered by Rurik's relative, the Novgorod Prince Oleg, who transferred the residence there, having told with a wake and Rasum. From this point Kiev became the capital of Russia. In Russia possession of the Kiev Grand Ducal table belonged, at least theoretically, to the senior in his sort and provided the supreme power over specific princes. Kiev remained the real political center of Kievan Rus, at least to the death of Vladimir Monomakh and his son Mstislav Veliki. In 1132, in the period of dissociation, Kiev formally continued to be considered as the senior table and served as constant object of fight between strong princes.
The period below the city was struck by capture and the plunder by troops of the Vladimir Prince Andrei Bogolyubsky in 1169, which became the case of ruin of a Grand Ducal throne versed in the history and disorder by troops of the Smolensk Prince Rurik Rostislav and Lvovly.
In 1240 Kiev was plundered and destroyed by Mongol Tatars. Further, the Kiev Principality continued the existence under a Mongolo-Tatar yoke. Rurik dynasty continued to govern him, however they received reigning on a label.
The new period in the history of Kiev began with a victory of Lithuanians in fight on the river Irpin, which occurred approximately in 1324. And how the Grand Duke Lithuanian Gedimin crushed army of the Grand Duke Kiev Stanislav Ivanovich as a result of what the Kiev Principality became the vassal of Lithuania, and Mindov Golshinsky, the founder of a new dynasty of the Kiev governors, Princes Golshinsky, became his new governor.
Ruled Kiev from 1321/24 to 1331 and from 1397 to 1435. In 1331 Rurik dynasty made the last attempt to seize the Kiev throne, the new prince by means of ordinates there was Fyodor.
However, after the victory of troops of the Lithuanian Prince Olgierd fight on blue waters in 1362, Rurik dynasty finally lost the Kiev table, and to him there ascended the son Olgierd of Vladimir, the representative Gediminovich and the ancestor Olalkavati. Ruled Kiev since 1362 on 1397 and from 1443 to 1471.
Competing with Golshinskymi for possession of the principality during all Lithuanian period.
From 1362 to 1569, Kiev is a part of Grand Duchy of Lithuania. From 1569 to 1654 is in structure of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Is a part of lands of Korona Polskaya.
In 1654 in the city there is the anti-Polish revolt and Kiev passes under a hand of the Moscow Tsar.
Under the terms of Andrasovsky Truce in 1667, it admitted beyond Russia for a while, however subsequently was finally redeemed by it for 146,000 rubles. During being part of the Russian kingdom. Since 1667. Kiev continued to remain one of the most important cultural and religious centers of the state.
After October 27, 1625 until 1708, the city of Kiev was the regimental center of the Kiev Regiment, administrative, territorial and military unit of Hetmanate.
On December 29, 1708, the territory of Russia was divided by Peter I's decree from 18 into 8 provinces, including the Kiev province. The center of the province, Kiev, is formed. In September 1781, the Kiev province is transformed to the Kiev Namestnichestvo. In 1796 the new Kiev province is founded, and a part of the territory which was on a left bank of Dnieper departed to the Little Russian province. In 1862 in the city management of the Kiev military district of the Russian army was located. After the February Revolution in Russia 3 on March 16, 1917 the city turned into submission to Provisional Government of Russia. After the October Revolution in Russia on October 25. On November 1917 the city, the province, management of the military district turned into submission of the Provisional Workers' and Peasants' Government. Since November 1917 Kiev repeatedly passed from hand to hand, the power constantly changed.
On November 7, 1917 the power in the city took Ukrainian Central Izblad, her 3 versatile person proclaimed the Ukrainian People's Republic.
Upper. In federal communication with the Russian Republic. Kiev became her capital. In her territory all laws, resolutions and orders of provisional government, if they weren't repealed, Central Glad the General Secretariat kept the force. 16 The revolt of Bolsheviks began on January 29, 1918. This revolt was suppressed on January 22. On February 1918, then independence of Un was declared. On January 26. On February 1918, troops of the Soviet Russia seized the city. On March 1, 1918, capture of the city by troops of Un under S5. Hitler's command. Return to the city of the government central. We are glad. On April 29, 1918, overthrow Central. We are glad the German authorities in declaration as the Hetman of Ukraine of P. Skoropadsky.
The city in which parts of the German army were deployed became the capital of the new Ukrainian state.
The Ukrainian power.
From April 29 to December 14, 1918 in the city there was a management of the case, the military district of the 4th Kiev building of the Ukrainian power.
On December 14, 1918, capture of Kiev by troops of on under S5. Petler's command. On February 5, 1919, the entry into Kiev of parts of the Red Army. On April 10, 1919, Red troops were beaten out for one day from a part of Kiev. The Sviatoshino, Kureniovka. By connection of the Ataman struck acting in the Chernobyl county. In the morning on August 31, 1919, Kiev was entered by parts of Volunteer Army of Armed Forces of the South of Russia, Galitsky Army, Army of On. Red troops left the city on August 30. In the second half of day, the Ukrainian troops left the city. On October 14, 1919, capture of the city by the Red Army. On October 16, 1919, the Volunteer Army recaptured the city back. On December 16, 1919, capture of Kiev by the Red Army. On May 7, 1920, Kiev was entered by parts of Army Polish. On June 12, 1920, capture of Kiev by the Red Army. Since June 12, 1920, finally I was a part of the Ukrainian Sir. At a boundary of -20 of centuries in city architectural space, the Kiev profitable houses dominated.
On June 24, 1934, according to the decision of Council of People's Commissars of Ukraine, the capital of the Ukrainian Sir is transferred from Kharkiv to Kiev.
For protection of the city from the Soviet-Polish border in 1928, construction of the Kiev Strengthened District began.
From 1936 to 1941 in Kiev, the system of railway tunnels near Dnieper was under construction, however her construction was interrupted with war.
Further, her unfinished components were partially flooded, and the remained materials became a basis for the first stations of the Kiev subway. On June 22, 1941, from management of the Kiev Special Military District, was allocated field management of the Southwest Front. Management of Kovo continued to work under the leadership of the Lieutenant General 5. F. Yakovlev. On July 11, fights on their approaches to the city were started. C. The Kiev Operation in defense of the Kiev Strengthened District. On September 19, 1941, the 37th Army of the Southwest Front defending the city left him and began to make the way from an environment. In the same day, Kiev was entered by troops of the 6th German Army. More than 70 days defense of the city continued. The German army lost more than 100,000 people here. In 1941-1943, near Babi Yar, there was a Syretsky extermination camp. During occupation, more than 100,000 residents of Kiev and prisoners of war were shot here. On November 3, 1943, troops of the 1st Ukrainian Front began the Kiev offensive operation. Since morning, removal of the German troops from the city began on November 5, 1943. By the morning on November 6, the capital of the Soviet Ukraine, Kiev, was freed by the Red Army. In 1951 in Kiev, the first in the USSR is created in continental Europe, the Mesm computer. On November 6, 1960 they began the work the Kiev subway.
On June 21, 1961, in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of heroic defense, Kiev is awarded with the Order of Lenin.
On the same day the Medal for Defense of Kiev is founded.
In the decree of Presidium of the Supreme Council of the USSR about establishment of the Medal for Defense of Kiev, the city of Kiev is called the Hero Town.
On May 1965, in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet people in the Great Patriotic War, to the city of Kiev the honorary title, Hero Town, is given and the medal, Gold Star, is handed.
In 1977, the Ukrainian studio of Chronicle Documentaries released the movie about the history of Kiev.
Since August 24, 1991, Kiev, the capital of independent Ukraine. In 2005 and 2017, Kiev became the venue according to the 50th and 62nd musical Eurovision contests.
In 2012, I was one of 4 Ukrainian cities hosting the European Football Championship 2012, and in 2018 I became the venue of a Champions League final of UEFA.
At the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, in the city there took place the main events of the Euromaidan. Climate: the most damp month, June. The driest and cold, January. The hottest, July. Average annual temperature, plus 8.4 C. Average annual speed of wind, minus 2.5 m/s. Average annual humidity of air, minus 74%. Average rainfall, minus 621. The total duration of sunshine in a year is 1927 hours, or 43% of possible. Nature. Characteristic feature of Kiev is a large number of green plantings. On reminiscence of the Soviet political figure 5. Tversky. During the visit to Kiev in 1966, Charles de Gaulle, the brilliant speaker, said an aphorism: "Less than I greater than so many wonderful parks in the cities, but I see the city in the park for the first time." City symbol, chestnut sheep. This tree appeared in the city at a turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. Chestnuts as an experiment set Boulevard Highway. Boulevard T. Shevchenko now. Later trees began to plant on all city. The city consists of 10 areas on the right and left coast of Dnieper.
Approved by the Kiev City Council, Master Plan of Development of Kiev till 2020, I provided expansion of the capital region, which part areas of Kiev region had to be. However, by the new approved development plan for Kiev till 2040, expansion of the territory of the city is planned.
Bereshevsky, Borodiansky, Bravarsky, Vasilkovsky, Vyshgorodsky, Kyiv-Svyatishinsky. It is abolished in 2020. Mikarovsky, Fastovsky. A number of satellite towns, among which there is Borispol, Boerka, Buch, Brovara, Vasilkov, Sherry, Vyshgorod, Irpin, Fastov. Special legal status of the city.
According to Article 133 of the Constitution of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv as the capital of Ukraine has the special status determined by the law of Ukraine about the capital of Ukraine, the hero town of Kyiv, and doesn't submit to a regional management.
The Constitution of Ukraine gives the same rights to the city of Sevastopol.
According to the specified law and its interpretation by the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, the Kyiv mayor elected on direct elections by achievement of the greatest number of the given votes of the voters participating in elections of the mayor becomes the head of the Kyiv city public administration.
KP. Automatically. Maiden Nezalesti.
Ukraine only once for all the time of independence conducted a population census in 2001 which recorded population at a rate of 2,611,327 people.
While the modern population of the city, there are various official estimates. The population assessment, which was so carried out by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine for December 1, 2019, showed 3,703,100 people of actual population, whereas the official assessment of population given by Eurostat for January 1, 2020 made 2,967,360 inhabitants. At the end of the 18th century, the population made about 30,000 people. According to a population census of 2001, 2,611,300 inhabitants lived in Kyiv. Now the population increases on average by 20,000 people a year. From 2, the population of Kyiv grew by 174,000 people. For January 1, 2018, the number of actual population was 2,934,522 persons. That is 0.3% more than on January 1, 2017. Resident population minus 2,893,215 people. Natural increase of the population of the city is positive. His size is much higher than over the country in general. Plus 2.2 persons on 1,000 mined 4.17 across Ukraine in general. And it is one of the highest rates of increase in population in Ukraine after the Transcarpathian and Rivne regions. Plus 3.7 and plus 2.4 respectively. According to Institute of Demography and Social Research's NAN of Ukraine, for the beginning of 2009 the actual population of Kyiv made 3,144,300 people, that is 420,000 more than the population at the time according to official statistics. In 2016, birth rate minus 12.5 on 1,000 people, mortality minus 10.5, natural increase minus 2.0. 4.4 across Ukraine in general. Migration indicators. The number of people who arrived on 10,000 minus 102.8, left minus 57.2, migration gain minus 45.6. 2.5 across Ukraine in general. In the middle of the 17th century, the vast majority of the population of Kyiv was made by Ukrainians, some share was made by Russians, Belarusians and Poles. Besides, Armenians, Jews, Greeks, Tatars, Germans and representatives of other ethnoses lived in the city. In the 19th century, due to assimilation in Kyiv, the share of Ukrainians significantly decreased. So, in their 1897 there were 22.2%, and in 1917, 16.4%. At the same time, the share of Russians from 54.2% decreased to 49.5%, and the share of Jews from 12.1% grew to 18.6%.
Further, the share of Ukrainians increased, and in 1926 they became the prevailing ethnos of Kiev, with an indicator of 42.2% of the remaining 24.4% of Russians again. By the beginning of the 21st century, the share of Ukrainians in Kiev from 72.5% in 1989 increased to 82.2% in 2001.
In the same time, the number of other nationalities decreased. Most of all, the number of Russians decreased from 536.2 thousand people, 20.9%. In 1989 up to 337.3 thousand people, 13.1%. In 2001. Also, the number of Belarusians, 1989 25.3 thousand people, 2001 16.5 thousand people. And Poles, 1989 4,000 people, 2001 6.9 thousand people. Decreased. By the beginning of the 21st century, process of emigration of Jews came to the end.
From 1989 to 2001, the absolute number of Jews in Kiev was reduced from 100.6 to 17.9 thousand people, and their share in the population of the city was reduced from 13.9% in 1959 to 0.7% in 2001.
The first information about the Jewish community of Kiev is dated the 10th century. The Kiev letter, the first mention of Kiev, was written in ancient Hebrew by the Kiev Jews.
The Jewish travelers, such as Benjamin from Tudela and Perkhai from Regensburg, wrote about Kiev as about the city with big Jewish community.
During the Mongolian invasion, the community, together with the city, was destroyed and was restored only during the Polish board. During this period, Jews were expelled from the city in 1459 and in 1619. In 1648, the community strongly suffered, as well as all Jewish population of Ukraine, from the Cossack revolt of Bogdan Khmelnytsky. After accession of Kiev to the Moscow state in 1654, Jews were forbidden to lodge in the city. The ban was cancelled only after the partition of Poland in 1793. Then the Polish Jews began to lodge in Kiev.
In the 19th century, the community continued to grow and over time turned into one of the most important Jewish communities of Ukraine.
During this period in the city, many synagogues, including the main synagogue of the city, the Brodsky Synagogue, were constructed. Also, several schools and workshops were constructed. In the second half of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th century, the community underwent several riots. In 1882, dozens of Jews were killed and wounded. Many houses were plundered. In 1905, the community also suffered from disorder.
In 1913, in Kiev, the known business of Bayless trial on charge of Jew Menahem Mendel Bayless of ritual murder of the 12-year-old pupil took place.
By results of process, Bayless was acquitted. During Civil War and the Ukrainian War of Independence, the Jewish community suffered several times from riots from contradictory forces.
After the end of war and establishment of the Soviet power, the community began to grow quickly, having reached in 1939 224,000 people.
After invasion of Nazi Germany into the USA, most of Jews managed to be evacuated from the city. On September 29, 30, 1941, the remained Jews were driven to Babi Yar and they were cruelly killed. In it, one of the most known episodes of the Holocaust, died 33731 persons.
150,000 more Jews were shot during 1941-1942.
After war, the escaped Jews returned to the city, and the community revived. In 1946, in the city, only one synagogue, the last appointed rabbi of the city, worked. The Rabbi Panitz left in 1960 and died in 1968. After his death, up to the 1998 years, in Kiev there were no rabbi. Most of Jews of the city emigrated after the collapse of the USSR and restoration of independence of Ukraine. In the 1998, the religious community revived.
Also, the memorial to the victims of the Holocaust in Babi Yar, where the official ceremony is held every year, was open.
Today in Kiev there live about 20,000 Jews. In the city there are 2 Jewish schools and 2 main religious communities with 2 synagogues, Shabbat. Rabbi Moshe Assman and Karlin. The Rabbi Yaakov Blake, he is the chief rabbi of Ukraine. The language history of Kiev is difficult and contradictory. In many respects it is reflection of his long and quite contradictory history and also various changes in language policy of the last centuries. The intensive mixture of 2 closely related languages which led to emergence of a so-called Sozik was noted in Kiev from the second quarter of the 19th century. As of 2000, in family communication of 18% of Kiev residents used Ukrainian, 48% Russian, and of 34% communicated in 2 languages, depending on circumstances. Commenting on results of the first population census of 2001, the Demoscope magazine called Kiev rather Ukrainian-speaking. In any case, the person interested to see to that. According to the last population census of 2001, 72.1% of Kiev residents called the native language Ukrainian, 25.3% Russian.
This ratio strongly changed from the moment of carrying out the last Soviet population census of 1989.
Religion. Soon after the Christianization of Kievan Rus. 988.
In Kiev, which became the center of the Kiev Metropolitanate of the Constantinople Patriarchy, the first stone temple of Russia, Thai church, was built.
In 2007 in Kiev there were 719 religious communities, among them there is an Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchy -177, Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kiev Patriarchy -91, Jehovah's Witnesses -49, Baptists -45, Christians of Belief Evangelical -40, WAPS -24, Seventh-day Adventist Church -21, Pentecostals -15, Oigts -9, Muslims -8, the Roman Catholic Church -8, Jews -7. Old Believers. The Russian Orthodox Old Belief Church -1 and at least 4 unregistered Buddhist communities. As of July 1, 2009 in Kiev are officially registered and 1067 religious organizations worked. Among them there are 813 religious communities, 44 spiritual centers, 21 managements, 106 missions, 21 brotherhoods, 41 spiritual educational institutions and 21 monasteries. During the survey conducted in November 2006, 64% of residents of Kyiv called themselves believers, 9% defined themselves believing in supernatural forces, 19% didn't define the religious affiliation, 8% atheists. Regularly visit religious services and institutions of 11% of all respondents, 64% occasionally. Believe in various superstitions from 23%. Guessing and prediction up to 52%. Mascots.
As of 2020, Kyiv was the administrative center for a number of the religious organizations of Ukraine.
Orthodox Church of Ukraine.
The residence of her head, Metropolitan of Kyiv and all Ukraine, and location of the cathedral, Mikhailovsky Zlatoverkhy Monastery. Also it possesses such Kyiv temples and monasteries as
the Sofia Monastery. Street. Sofia Cathedral of 8 church services carried out only in days of big Christian holidays and great historical holidays for the Ukrainian people. In Refectory Church it is constant. The Vidobitsky Monastery, the Sacred and Feodosievsky Monastery, Vladimirsky Cathedral, Transfiguration Cathedral, Nikola Pratiska's, Church of the Nativity, Church of the Intercession, Church of the Intercession on Solomenka. Church of the Dormition of the Theotokos Pyrogoshchi, Church Nikolai Nabareny, Sretenskaya Church, Church of the Ascension, etc. Besides, belongs to her the Kyiv Orthodox Theological Academy. Ukrainian Orthodox Church is a part of the Moscow Patriarchy. The residence of her head, Metropolitan of Kyiv and all Ukraine, and location of the temporary cathedral, Kyiv Pekarsk Lavra.
Also she possesses such Kyiv temples and monasteries as
the Florovsky Monastery, the Sacred and Troitsk-Sianinsky Monastery, the Zveronetsky Cave Monastery, Vdensky Monastery, Street. Hanalaiman Monastery, the Pokrovsk Monastery, the Tide Monastery of the Nativity of the Theotokos, Kolosivskaya of Deserts, Kitievskaya of Deserts, Sacred and Olginsky Cathedral, Trinity Cathedral, Kirilovsky Church, Ilyinsky Church, Krestovskaya Church, Mikhailovsky Church at Alexandrovsky Hospital, the Church of the Intercession of the Most Holy Mother of God on Priorka, Kyivo-Podolsky Vdenskaya Church,
the Trievsky,
Konstantino-Eleninskaya Church, Sacred and Voznesensky Church, Makarievsky Church, Church of the Prelate Nikolai on Water Church, Fyodor Osvyasheny, Church of Saints Peter and Paul, Church of the Nativity on Obolin, Church of Street, Sergius of Rodinez, etc.
Besides, belong to her the Kyiv Theological Seminary and the Kyiv Spiritual Academy.
Storopegic Monastery of the Constantinople Patriarchy in Kyiv. It possesses Andriivsky Church. Kyiv and Ukraine Diocese of the Russian Orthodox Old Belief Church. The Cathedral Temple, Church of the Dormition of the Theotokos on Pokaninskaya Street. Resurrection Cathedral, the main cathedral of the Catholicos of the Ukrainian Greco-Catholic Church.
Catholics.
Ukrainian Greco-Catholic Church. The Patriarchal Center, Resurrection Cathedral. Also she possesses Nikola Dobry's Church and Saint Nikolai's Church on the Oskoldovy grave. The Odzes Kiev of the Roman Catholic Church.
The Cathedral, St. Alexander's Cathedral.
Also he possesses the Nikolaev Church. Provincial Vikarstvo of Ukraine of the Dominican Award. He possesses the highest institute of religious sciences of Street. Thomas Aquinas and Blessed Virgin Mary's Monastery. Embassy of the Sovereign Order of Malta in Ukraine. Also in the city there is an office of the Maltese Service of the Help. Apostolic Nunciature in Ukraine. Kyiv Community of the German Evangelic and Lutheran Church of Ukraine. She possesses Lutheran Church of St. Catherine. Kyiv Community of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She possesses the Kyiv Ukrainian Temple. Muslims. Spiritual Administration of Muslims of Ukraine, Hama. It possesses the Islamic Cultural Center. The Kyiv Jewish Community, the largest in Ukraine. Chief Rabbi of Kyiv. Rabbi Markovic, Jonathan Benjamin. In the territory of the city several synagogues work. A synagogue on Saksagansky 67, the synagogue of the Kyiv Judaic religious community, the choral synagogue of Brodsky and the Galitsky synagogue. Economy. Kyiv is the large economic and industrial center of the country. It is the biggest city of Ukraine from the point of view of both the population and business activity. For January 1, 2010 in Kyiv about card subjects of business were registered.
Official data show that during the period from 2004 to 2008 the economy of Kyiv advanced the rest of the country, increasing on average by 11.5% a year.
After the global financial crisis which began in 2007, the economy of Kyiv in 2009 strongly suffered. The gross regional product was reduced by 13.5%. Despite record-breaking high level, decrease of the activity was on 1.6 percentage points less than countrywide. The economy in Kyiv, as well as in the rest of Ukraine, was a little restored in 2010 and 2011. Kyiv is the city with the average level of income, and now the prices are comparable to many American cities of the average size. That is much lower than in Western Europe.
As this city can brag of a big and various economic basis and doesn't depend on any separate industry or the company, its unemployment rate historically was rather low, only 3.75% for 2005-2008.
Even in spite of the fact that unemployment rate jumped up to 7.1% in 2009, it remained much lower than an average over the country of 9.6%. As of July 2019, average monthly net salary in Kyiv reached 16249 hryvnias, €560/$630. Kyiv is the indisputable center of business and commerce of Ukraine. The largest companies of the country, such as Naftogaz of Ukraine, Power Market and Kyivstar are located here. In 2010, 18% of national retails and 24% of all construction activity fell to the share of the city. The real estate is one of bases in economy of Kyiv. Average prices for apartments the highest in the country and some of the highest in Eastern Europe.
Kyiv also takes high positions on the commercial real estate because the highest office buildings of the country,
such as Gulliver Sale, and some of the largest shopping centers of Ukraine exactly here are located, such as Dreamtown and Ocean Plaza. Primary branches of the industry in Kyiv include the easy and food industries, chemical production, mechanical engineering, pharmaceutics, metallurgy, aircraft industry, polygraphy, including the publication, the press and copying of the written down data carriers. In Kyiv, the Institute of Oil Transportation is also located. Large enterprises. Obolin Brewery. Kyiv Shipbuilding and Ship Repair Plant. Kyiv Armored Plant. Zhestmayak Plant. Kyiv Plant Bolshevik. Kyiv Plant Smithy on Rybalski. Leninska Kaznia. Nlspiek Agromet. The 410th Plant of Civil Aviation. Arsenal Plant. Transport. Kyiv, the large transport hub. Iron and highways, the river port, the airports. Since 1960 the subway works are developed bus, trolleybus and tram networks, the funicular works. Air. And also military airfield. Kyiv Bravarsky, destroyed in 1941, was the first airport passenger terminal. Now in Kyiv there are 3 airports. The international airport Boryspil is to the southeast Kyiv, in the city of Boryspil of Kyiv region. International Airport Kyiv. Juliana. International Airport Antonov. Postomel. Within the city also experimental airfields Vyatoshin. Test airfield of the Kyiv aircraft factory Aviant is located. In the neighborhood of the city military airfields in the cities of Cornflowers, Uzin, Bielitserkva are also located. Plans of use of airfields of Cornflowers and Bielitserkva as passenger airports were repeatedly discussed. Near the city a number of small airfields is located. Seagull. Former base Dosov, parachute base, sports aircraft. Buzovea. Glider base. Dolina. Sports aircraft. Nalivekatka. Sports aircraft. Baishev, Borodianka. Parachute base. Devichki, Gogolev, Kyiv Yushny. Verbinki, agricultural. Aircraft, parachute base, helicopters. And others. For 2017 more than 11 million passengers used the Kyiv airports. Kyiv, the large railway junction. In Kyiv there is a head department of the Southwest Railroad. The central railway station, Kyiv Passenger. In Kyiv 5 main lines in Fastov's directions, Korostanya, Nezin, Bikom, Mironovki meet. Also across Kyiv there passes the Northern Ring, which passes from the station Borshikovka and the station Svyatoshin through the station Pochena and Kyiv Dnieper to the station Donetsa. All main lines are electrified. There is a departmental and electrified branch line from the station Pochena to Vyshgorod. In 2011 on her the suburban diesel train several times a day plied. Now passenger traffic on the line is absent because of a low passenger traffic. In 2009 the first stage of the city electric train is started. Since October 4, 2011 trains ply by the Ring Railroad. Through Kyiv there pass several highways of the international value. In the western direction from Kyiv conducts 2 roads.
To the Hungarian border in Est, there is Highway MO6, and to Polish Highway MO7.
In the east, to Odessa, there is Highway MO5 on the north. To Belarus, Highway MO1 on the southeast. To Kharkiv, Highway MO3.
Also, Kyiv leaves two national highways.
On the south to the central regions of the country, Highway HO1, and to the Russian border. In Yanakovka, Highway HO7. Kyiv. The river port was built in July 1897. Moorings of port extend from the harbor to the Dnieper metro station. Passenger and cargo transportation across Dnieper were carried out by Ukrekflot Shipping Company. In Soviet period, passenger traffic was unprofitable, but was subsidized by the state. After privatization of Ukrekflot on November 11, 1992, the volume of transportations began to fall. Along with it, the passenger ships and vessels were sold abroad, went on scrap metal.
Today, across Dnieper for passengers, excursion routes only near Kyiv are carried out.
In 2009, the type of public transport forgotten for Kyiv, so-called river bus, for the message between the right and left coast of Kyiv was started. The tram plies only in warm season. Dnieper is used for transportation of large-size freights. Construction of the subway in Kyiv is begun in 1949. The first site is open on November 6, 1960. For today, 3 lines. Sviatoshinsko-Brovsky, Obolin and Tereмкhovsky, Soretsko-Pechersky. With a total length of 67.6 km with 52 stations work. Daily the subway transports about 1.439 million passengers. On. For 2012. Stations of the subway of the first stage are architecture monuments.
In 2012, the Golden Gate station was included into the list from 22 most beautiful stations of the subway of Europe.
In 2010-2013, 6 stations on the Obolin and Tereмкhovsky line, Dmievskaya, Kolosivskaya, Veselkovskaya, Exhibition Center, Hippodrome, and Teremka are opened. A bridge crossing through the Dnieper River and the Sranka on future 4th line, Podolsk and Figurovskoye in continuation of the Soretsko-Pechersky line on the northwest of the city with 2 stations, Mostitskaya and Pravda Avenue, is under construction. The 5th is projected, the Vigorodsko-Vinitsky line. Tram. Kyiv, the first city of the Russian Empire in which the electric tram appeared. First line 1. 5 km long was opened 1 on June 13, 1892 on Alexandrovsky descent. Now the Vladimir descent. And Alexandrovskaya Street. Sagidakny Street.
On December 30, 1978 in Kyiv opened the Hussars' first line of the high-speed tram from Victory Square to the inhabited Borshikovka array built at the initiative of Vladimir Veklik and Vasily Diakonov.
1990 became culmination in development of tram network. The total length of lines was 275.9 km. The production base was 904 passenger tram cars. The annual volume of transportations reached car people. From the middle of the 1990th years, the tram economy gradually falls into decay. For 2005, the corresponding indicators decreased up to 258.3 km and 509 tram cars. The annual volume of transportations was about cart.
After reconstruction of Patton Bridge in 2004, the tram network of the city was broken off on 2 separate parts, left bank and right bank. The funicular was constructed as an effective way to reduce away from the top city by the hem.
It is put into operation in May 1905. Length of his way was 193 m. It was reconstructed in 1928. It is extended on 41m. 1958 and 1984.
Works on the organization of the trolleybus movement in Kiev were begun in 1934 with return to Kiev of the status of the capital.
Krasnoarmyskaya Street became the first trolleybus route.
On June 12, 1966, Kiev inventor Vladimir Veklik created the first in world practice trolleybus train. By 1983 and 296 trolleybus trains on Vladimir Veklik's system, more than a half of the park of the Kiev trolleybuses worked that more than 800 drivers allowed to release.
Successful experience of Kiev residents was adopted more than in 20 cities of the former CCC. For 2000 in Kiev 35 trolleybus routes function. Total length of trolleybus lines is 324.9 km. The park consists of 640 cars. Since May 2006 the quantity of trolleybus routes reached 44. For December 2010 37 routes function. 4 trolleybus depots work. For the first time tried to start the regular bus movement in Kiev in 1913. Actually full work of the bus began 1925. Then 2 buses worked at the only route. Now in Kiev about 90 municipal bus routes work. The number of buses exceeds 700 units. 8 bus fleets function. In Kiev, parallel to the majority of lines of public transport, lines of the share taxi work. Also lines of the share taxi connect the city with suburbs. Lines of the share taxi are served by the private companies, haulers and municipal ATP.
Proceeding from big density of population of the city and presence of motor transport at inhabitants to the capital, thereby in services industry in Kiev there is a large number of car services on service and car repairs.
As of 2019 in Kiev about 1100 car services. The first capital bridge through Dnieper is built in 1853, so-called Sinoe Bridge. In 1870 under the leadership of the military engineer Amanda Struve it is built the metal railway bridge in Donetsk. The second railway bridge, Petrovsky, is built in 1917, however soon it was destroyed. It is renewed in 1929. Near present Patton Bridge there was Novodnitsky Bridge of a pontoon design which Staronovonitskoye and Novonitsky gave the name to streets. In 1914 on his place built the stationary wooden bridge destroyed in 1920. It was restored in 1921 and existed till 1935 when it was replaced with other wooden bridge. During the Great Patriotic War all bridges through Dnieper River were destroyed. After liberation of Kiev temporary wooden bridges. On November 6, 1943. Are built. Today coast of Dnieper in city boundaries connect 8 bridges, from them 4 automobile, Northern, Metro Bridge, Patton Bridge and Yushny, 2 railway, Donitsia and Petrovsky, 1 railway and automobile, Kirpy and also the pedestrian bridge. Construction Podolsk continues. Kiev has reputation of one of the most green capitals of Europe. Nevertheless, in recent years in Kiev, as well as in all large cities, the increasing relevance is acquired by air pollution by exhaust gases of cars. The main pollutant of air in Kyiv is motor transport. He gives 83.4% of all harmful emissions in the atmosphere. Also large pollutants in Kyiv are the Koldonitsia combined heat and power plant and utility company of Kyiv. According to the State Agency of Water Resources of Ukraine, Kyiv is the largest water pollutant in Ukraine, dumping hundreds of millions cubic meters of not enough purified sewage in water objects. Several hundreds of century and outstanding trees of Kyiv are botanical nature sanctuaries. Culture and rest. In Kyiv 27 museums, 25 theaters and theater studios. For example, National Academic Opera and Ballet Theatre of Ukraine of T. Shevchenko, the Kyiv Municipal Academic Opera and Ballet Theatre for Children and Youth. National Academic Drama Theatre of Ivan Franko. National Academic Theatre of the Russian Drama of Lesa Ukrainka. Poet Theatre. Theatre on the Hem, the Kyiv Academic Young Theatre, the Kyiv National Academic Operetta Theatre, the Kyiv State Academic Puppet Theatre, the Kyiv Municipal Academic Puppet Theatre. The Kyiv State Academic Drama Theatre on the Left Coast, the Kyiv Variety Theatre, Silver Island Theatre. In Kyiv there is one of the biggest planetaria in the territory of Eastern Europe. Kyiv is rich with monuments of culture and art. The most important of them: Golden Gate Street, Sofia Cathedral, 11th century. The Videbitsky Monastery, 11th century. A complex of constructions of Kyiv Pekarsklavra, the 11th-18th centuries. Mikhailovsky Zlatoverkhy Monastery, the Florovsky Monastery. The head of the 16th century. Church of Savior on Berstav, 12th century. Baroque-Voskresensky, Andreevsky, Pokrovsk, Troitsk churches, painted with Viktor Vasnetsov, Mikhail Nestorov, etc. Vladimirsky Cathedral, 19th century. The church which is restored/painted with Mikhail Vrubel-Kirilskaya, 12th century. Klovsky and Marinsky palaces. Forests, parks and gardens make more than a half of its area. In the territory of the city there are 2 botanical gardens. Kyiv is fairly called one of the most green cities of the world. And once he was considered as the most green. The well-known Kyiv chestnuts which magnificently blossom in May, and sometimes in 2 times a year. In the spring and in the fall, became one of city symbols. This city is also the venue of the Kyiv International Youth Film Festival, International Festival de Chestnut House, the International Festival, Poetic League, the Kyiv International Film Festival and a Film Festival of Stozara. In Kyiv there are also the highest trellised construction and the deepest metro station in the world. Kyiv, the museum center of Ukraine, hundreds of the museums and cultural institutions are located here. Among the most visited, National Art Museum of Ukraine, the Museum of One Street, the State Air Museum of Ukraine, Water Information Center, the National Museum of History of Ukraine, the Mistetsky Arsenal, the National Museum, Chernobyl, Drugstore Museum in Kyiv, National Museum of Art of Bogdan and Varvara Hanenko, the Museum of History of Ukraine in World War II, the Museum of National Architecture and Life of Ukraine, the Kyiv Fortress, Mikhail Bulgakov's Museum and others. Kyiv has a large number of gardens and parks for rest, among which there is a National Botanical Garden, the Botanical Garden of A5. Fomin Shevchenko's Park, the Kreshetety Park, the Marinsky Park, the Gardens, the Vladimir Hill, Skoldovae Grave, the Park of Eternal Glory, Pezesnaya Avenue, Kitra Park, the Golosivsky Park, the Golosivsky Wood, the Park of Gorilla Glory, the Park of Pushkin, the Kyiv Zoo.
Most often Kiev residents and city visitors visit the National Botanical Garden during a blossoming season of Sadovy lilac and Drevsky descent during the celebration of Day of Kiev, and also a city flower show which is annually carried out in the Pechersky Landscape Park around the Sinemfield in days of celebration of the independence of Ukraine in the last week of August.
In the Kyoto Park on September 3, 2011, it is landed the longest avenue of oriental cherries in Europe. The city is known for the historical and modern skyscrapers. The first skyscrapers appeared in Kiev at the beginning of the 20th century. The Kiev Palace, 1901. Ginsburg's, 1912. Skyscraper, building of the Cabinet of Ukraine, 1938. In the years of post-war restoration, the cities in Kiev constructed such known skyscrapers as
High-rise house to the address Kreshetik 25 and Ukraine Hotel.
In 1970, the 1980th years in the city appeared hotel skyscrapers. Kiev, Russia, tourist sport and others. Now in Kiev there are 7 highest skyscrapers of Ukraine. Eski Klovsky, Efiev Gulliver, BB Paris, Eski Jackhouse, Eski Crown, No. 2 and building of Court of Appeal of the city of Kiev. In 2012, the construction of a 48-story housing estate on Klovsky Descent, which has height of 168 meters, is completed. On Pobody Avenue, near the Central Registry Office, construction of a skyscraper of Sky Towers continues. At the end it will be the highest skyscraper of Ukraine. Height of 210 meters. And will have 47 floors.
And the project remains constructions of business center Kiev City on the Rybalsky Island, where skyscrapers 200-300 meters high will tower.
In Kiev, large number of various memorials, monuments, sculptural groups, memorable signs, busts and figures. In total in the territory of the city more than 350 monuments are located. As well as in other cities of Ukraine, the majority of monuments in Kiev is concentrated in the central historical part, though some of them, considering the city size, formation of own cells of administrative units of the city areas, territorial placement of objects of culture, places of historical events, accommodation and work of outstanding figures, etc., are located across all territory of the city. Among the most known, the Independence Monument, the monument to founders of Kiev, to Vladimir Veliky, Yaroslav the Wise, the Princess Olga, Bogdan Khmelnytsky, Taras Shevchenko, the Motherland, the Monument of Eternal Glory, the Column of the Magdeburg Rite, the Samson Fountain and others. Tourism. From the moment of introduction of a visa-free regime for EU member states and Switzerland in 2005 in Ukraine, continuous growth of number of the foreign tourists visiting the country is observed. Prior to an economic crisis, 2008-2009, the average annual growth of number of foreign visits to Kiev during the 3-year period was 23%. In 2009-1, 6 million tourists, from whom nearly 259,000, about 16%, were foreigners, stayed at hotels of Kiev in total. After Euro-2012, the city became the most popular place for the European tourists. Then the record number of foreign tourists of 1.8 million and about 2.5 million internal tourists was registered.
More than 850,000 foreign tourists visited Kyiv in the first half of 2018 in comparison with 660,000 tourists for the same period in 2013.
As of 2018, the occupancy of hotels from May to September averages 45–50%. Hostels and 3-star hotels, 4-star hotels, for 65–70% are filled approximately for 90%. 6 5-star hotels are filled on average for 50–55%. Ordinary tourists, as a rule, come from May to October, business tourists from September to May. Periodically in Kyiv, musical festivals are held. In particular, the Academic Music, Pike Music Fest, the Forum of Music of Young People, musical premieres of a season, a festival of piano music, Vladimir Kranov invites, a festival of choral music Zlatoviki Kyiv, and also festivals of variety music, Diru, Kra Paragraph Num Ryan others is read. Holding in Kyiv, the Eurovision Song Contest became an important musical event of 2005 and 2017. From December 12 to December 16, 2005 in Kyiv played the International Youth Delphic Games, the third Youth Delphic Games of the state party sees. Integral part of musical life of the capital are periodic musical competitions. Pianist's Memory of 5. Choroists, conductors of S. Terchak, choral collectives of M. Leontovich, vocalists of Salomia Krushelnitskaya, bandura players of Nat Hotkovich, and also a versatile competition of N. Lysenko. Scientific research is conducted in many higher education institutions and research institutes at National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Also in Kyiv, the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine is located. Education. Since 9th century, Kyiv was the important center of intellectual development of Eastern Europe. Since the end of the 17th century, the Kyivo-Mogyliansky Academy prepared many famous scientists.
However, the first modern university of the European sample was founded by Nicholas I's decree in 1834.
Kyiv Imperial University of St. Vladimir. The Kyiv University became the 7th university of the Russian Empire. Kyiv, the largest Ukrainian center of science and education. In Kyiv, the large number of the highest and average special educational institutions, in particular, the higher education institutions which are among the most prestigious universities of Ukraine, is located. Kyiv National University of Taras Shevchenko, Kyiv Polytechnical Institute of Igor Sikorsky, and National University, Kyivo-Mogyliansky Academy. Kyiv Polytechnical Institute of Igor Sikorsky.
In Kyiv, about 350 schools, more than 100 gymnasiums and lyceums, about 70 higher education institutions, including
Kyiv National Economic University, National Transport University, National Aviation University, Kyiv National University of Construction and Architecture, KC, National Pedagogical University of MP, Dragomanov, State University of Telecommunications, National University, Kyivo-Mogyliansky Academy, National Musical Academy of Ukraine of P. 1. Tchaikovsky Institute of Advertising, Kyiv National Linguistic University, Faculty of Foreign Languages, National University of Biosources and Environmental Management of Ukraine, Kyiv National University of Internal Affairs, National Academy of the Fine Arts and Architecture, National Medical University of A. Bogomolets, International Solomonov University, National University of Physical Training and Sport of Ukraine, INFIS, Kyiv National University of Theatre, Cinema and Television of IK, Karpenko-Gary, Kyiv National University of Culture and Arts, Kyiv National University of Technologies and Design, National University of Food Technologies, Kyiv University of a Market Relationship, Kyiv National Trade and Economic University, Kyiv University of Boris Grinchenko. Cemeteries. Long since notable residents of Kyiv were buried in monasteries, cathedrals, churches and on their churchyards. At Church Street, Sofia Cathedral, Mikhailovsky Zlatoversky Monastery, Davidobitsky Monastery, Church of Savior on Berstov, Kirilovsky Church, Bratsky Monastery, Frollovsky Monastery, etc. Kyiv Pekarsklovra, Hernir and Far Caves, Assumption Cathedral were places of burials. The first mention of cemeteries for Massachusetts burials in Kyiv belongs to the end of the 17th century. Epidemic of plague of the 1778 years became the reason for creation of the first city cemeteries. Podolsk. On the Mount Chekovitsa, it is liquidated in the 1930th years. And Kudryavsky. In the estate of Church of the Ascension, it is liquidated in the 1930th years. In 1786 the cemetery on the Askoldovi grave was transformed to city. From the second half of the 19th century it became the place of burial for an exclusive part of the population of Kyiv. It is liquidated in 1935. Besides, the cemetery remains on Zamkova Hora and the old Belief Cemetery on Lukyanovskaya Street remained. Burials also existed on churchyards of parish churches of the city, most of which didn't remain up to now. Now in the city about 20 cemeteries, among which Baikovo is the cemetery, the Zveronetsky Cemetery, the Kurinyovsky Cemetery, the Lukyanovsky Cemetery, the Solomensky Cemetery, the Shulyovsky Cemetery, the Berkovetsky Cemetery, the Forest Cemetery, the Northern Cemetery, the Southern Cemetery are acting. Sport. In Kyiv there are a lot of professional and amateur football clubs, including Dynamo Kyiv, Arsenal Kyiv, Obolenbrover, Lokomotiv Football Club, Dynamo Kyiv. 29 times became the champion of the USSR and Ukraine, won the international trophies, being the real symbol of the city. The best Ukrainian men's basketball club since the USSR is Budivelnik, which together with BB Kyiv acted in the integrated Ukrainian Basketball Super League. In domestic female basketball the leading positions are taken by the Timskov Kyiv team. In professional hockey league the hockey club Sokol acts. In Soviet period women's handball club, Spartak, repeatedly won national championship and the European club trophies. The main arenas of sports competitions is Ansk, Olympic, Sports Palace, Dynamo stadiums of 5. Lobanovsky and Obolin Arena.
On Ansk Olympic there took place football matches of the Olympic Games 1980, 5 matches of the European Football Championship of 2012,
including the final, and also the Champions League final of OA of 2018. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.